I finally purchased my dream home and asked my family to come see it. Not a single one came. Everyone gave excuses while I sat alone unpacking boxes. Then my dad messaged, "We need to discuss the house," but what I replied left them all stunned. I had just bought my dream home, the one I'd spent 10 grueling years saving for. I threw a housewarming, poured my heart into it, but not a single family member showed up. Not one. And then, as I sat alone in that empty house, my phone buzzed with a text from my dad that made my blood run absolutely cold. "We need to talk about the house." See, my story really begins much earlier, in a cramped 2-bedroom apartment on the east side of town. My parents, Thomas and Linda, worked multiple grueling jobs just to keep us afloat. Mom waited tables in the mornings, then cleaned offices at night. Dad bounced between construction and security gigs, whatever he could find. My younger siblings, Natalie and Adam, shared the one spare bedroom, and I slept on a pull-out couch in the living room until I was 17. Money wasn't just tight, it was a constant, suffocating presence. I remember Mom stretching a single pound of ground beef across 3 meals, adding more and more beans each time. Dad would track every single kilowatt on the electric bill, lecturing us if we dared leave a light on in an empty room. "Electricity costs money we don't have," he'd sigh, flipping the switch with a weight that spoke volumes about his worries. But despite all that, we had our Sunday drives. Once a month, Mom would coax Dad into borrowing his brother's car, and we'd cruise through the fancy neighborhoods on the other side of town. Those streets, lined with magnificent houses, utterly captivated me. I'd press my face against the window, picking out my favorites, imagining a life beyond our apartment. "Look at that one with the red door, Mom." I'd point, eyes wide at a craftsman with a wide porch and hanging flower baskets. Mom would smile, her eyes lighting up. "That one's gorgeous, Justine." All those windows would let in so much natural light. But Dad's response was always the same, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. "People like us don't own houses like that. Best not to fill your head with impossible dreams." His words weren't a deterrent, though. They were a challenge. A fire lit inside me, a silent vow that I would prove him wrong. By 15, that fire was still burning. I convinced the owner of a local diner to hire me, working weekends and after school. Every single dollar I earned, I squirreled away, hiding it in a lockbox under my pull-out bed. When my parents found out, they expected me to chip in for household expenses, which I did, but I still managed to set aside half of every paycheck, religiously, for my future. High school graduation brought news I never saw coming. My guidance counselor, Mrs. Garner, practically dragged me to her office one April afternoon, practically bouncing with excitement. "Justine, have you checked your email today?" she asked, her voice electric. I hadn't. Internet at home was a luxury we couldn't afford. But when she showed me the scholarship notification on her computer screen, I just burst into tears. A full ride to State University, even housing included. Me. The first person in my entire family to go to college. I expected everyone to celebrate this monumental victory. Mom did, thank God, hugging me so tightly she almost squeezed the air out of me. "I always knew you were special," she whispered. Dad offered a quick nod, a flicker of pride in his eyes, but it was quickly snuffed out by his usual practicality. College is expensive, even with scholarships. Books, supplies, living expenses. Don't get too big for your boots, Justine. Natalie, then 14, seemed genuinely happy for me, and Adam, only 12, was just too young to grasp the true significance. College, let me tell you, it tested me in ways I never imagined. The scholarship covered tuition and basic housing, but that was it. I worked at the campus bookstore between classes, then waited tables at a restaurant near campus on weekends. Sleep became a distant memory. But I had to keep my grades up, and I had to keep saving. The financial strain was immense, but the cultural shift? That was even harder. Most of my classmates came from seriously wealthy families. They talked about European vacations. Their parents were doctors, lawyers, business executives. I learned to navigate conversations like a tightrope walker, sharing little about my own background, feeling that chasm between our experiences growing wider every day. When I called home, our conversations became increasingly strained. Mom wanted every detail of campus life, living vicariously through me. Dad, though, He mostly asked about costs and if my jobs were getting in the way of my studies. Natalie and Adam, we talked less and less. Our shared childhood experiences, once our common ground, weren't enough to bridge the growing gap anymore. Then came graduation day, after 4 grueling, exhausting years. I scanned the audience over and over, desperately hoping to see my entire family. But only Mom was there, sitting alone, in a dress I knew she'd saved months to buy. "Where is everyone?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper when we finally met after the ceremony. "Your father picked up an extra shift. They're short-handed at the site," she explained, avoiding my gaze. "Natalie has a school project due, and Adam wasn't feeling well." I just nodded, swallowing the bitter pill of disappointment. We took pictures, just the 2 of us, my hard-earned diploma held between us. Later, I realized that day set a chilling pattern. My achievements, no matter how significant to me, often received minimal acknowledgement from most of my family. Their absence at graduation, that was just the painful beginning. Armed with my marketing degree, I landed an entry-level position at Blake & Associates, a mid-sized firm downtown. The starting salary wasn't much, but the growth potential was real, and that's all I cared about. I found a tiny studio apartment, a mere 20-minute bus ride from the office. It was barely 400 square feet, with a kitchenette so small I could literally touch opposite counters without fully stretching my arms. But it was mine, and the rent allowed me to keep saving. My financial plan was practically a sacred text: 50% for essentials, 30% for savings, strictly for that future home, and 20% for everything else, like an occasional movie or dinner. I tracked every single dollar on a spreadsheet, watching my house fund grow, penny by painstaking penny. "You need to live a little," my colleague Samantha would say, waving concert tickets. I'd just shake my head. "You're only young once," she'd persist. She wasn't wrong, I knew. But my focus, it was utterly unwavering. My father's words about impossible dreams still echoed in my ears, fueling every single sacrifice. This wasn't just about saving for a house, it was about proving something. To myself and to them. Professional growth came steadily, a quiet victory with each passing year. By my 2nd year, I was promoted to account manager. By year 4, senior account manager. But every single raise, it went straight into that house fund. My living situation didn't change. My tiny apartment remained my home base. And I didn't stop there. Weekends, evenings, I poured myself into building a side business, managing social media for local small businesses. It started with 1 client, the florist downstairs, and grew to 8 regular accounts. That extra income was a game changer. It accelerated my savings significantly. My personal life, though, it frankly took a back seat to these all-consuming financial goals. Friends eventually stopped inviting me to expensive outings, knowing my answer would always be no. My apartment stayed sparsely furnished, mostly with secondhand finds. Vacations, non-existent. Even holidays became prime working days. Businesses needed social media coverage, and I needed the money. Then 3 years into my corporate job, I met Marcus in the elevator. He worked 2 floors above me, and his smile was bright, captivating, as he asked about the precarious stack of social media documents I was juggling. Our relationship developed slowly. Coffee dates turned into dinner, then movies, and eventually, weekends spent together. He was patient with my insane schedule, and initially, so supportive of my goals. About 6 months in, he suggested moving in together to save on rent. "We could get a nicer place for less than we're paying separately," he reasoned. "You'd reach your house fund goal even faster." His logic was sound, undeniably. But something held me back. Maybe it was the fear of merging my meticulously controlled financial world with someone else's, or the terrifying thought that my savings discipline might slacken with a partner. Whatever it was, I declined. And to his credit, Marcus accepted my decision with grace. But 3 years into our relationship, the cracks started to show. Marcus began calling my saving habits an obsession. Arguments erupted over declined invitations to friends' destination weddings, my reluctance to spend on experiences he valued. "There's more to life than preparing for a future that might never come," he said during our final, explosive fight. "You're missing everything that's happening right now." The breakup was painful, gut-wrenching, but it was also incredibly clarifying. I realized I wasn't willing to compromise on my goal, not even for love. That house, you see, it was more than just physical property. It was tangible proof that people like us could achieve what my father had called impossible. My family's reactions to my career progression? They were complicated. Mom expressed genuine pride in my professional accomplishments, which meant the world. But during her infrequent visits to my apartments, she seemed increasingly uncomfortable. "This neighborhood is so different from ours," she'd comment, nervously glancing at the young professionals streaming into the coffee shop below. "Dad, he flat out refused to visit. Downtown's too fancy for me," he'd say dismissively. "Too many one-way streets, no place to park." My relationships with Natalie and Adam shifted, too. Adam, now working irregular construction gigs, much like Dad, called primarily when he needed money. My attempts to help him with budgeting or job applications were met with fierce defensiveness. "Not everyone wants to work themselves to death for some American dream fantasy," he snapped when I suggested a trade certification program. Natalie had married young, had 2 kids quickly. Our conversations revolved exclusively around her children, with little interest in my life. If I ever mentioned my growing house fund after a particularly good quarter with my side business, she'd abruptly change the subject. It stung, every single time. Then, 8 years into my career, a revelation hit me during a client meeting. The CEO of a local startup casually mentioned buying her first investment property at 34. "The perfect time to build wealth," she said, "is when you have income, but before you have major family obligations." I was 32. It clicked. My timeline. It could be accelerated. My meticulously built savings, combined with my excellent credit score and steady income from both my primary job and side business, put homeownership within reach 2 years earlier than I'd ever dreamed. That very evening, I contacted a mortgage broker for a preliminary consultation. My heart was practically thrumming. My meeting with James, the mortgage broker, confirmed every single suspicion. 8 years of disciplined saving and relentless career advancement had put me in an incredible position. My pre-approval amount actually exceeded my expectations, though I was determined to stay below that maximum to maintain financial flexibility. "You've done the hard part already," James said, looking over my impeccable credit report and substantial down payment. "Most first-time buyers struggle with the saving phase. You're in an enviable position." His words, they were pure validation for all those years of sacrifice, every declined invitation, every sparsely furnished apartment. Next, the hunt for a realtor. Through a work connection, I found Kelly, a no-nonsense agent who specialized in first-time buyers. Our initial conversations were clear, precise. I wanted a craftsman or colonial style, a minimum of 3 bedrooms for family visits and a home office in an established neighborhood with character, and a reasonable commute downtown. "I've been visualizing this house for 15 years, I explained to Kelly, my voice filled with anticipation. "I'll know it when I see it, but these are my non-negotiables." But the house hunting process, oh man, it was way more emotionally taxing than I ever anticipated. Over 3 grueling months, we viewed 47 properties. Some came close to my vision, tantalizingly close, but they all had fatal flaws. Hidden water damage, outdated electrical systems that would cost a fortune to fix, or locations that would add an hour to my already long commute. By property 38, I was utterly exhausted. "Maybe I'm being too picky," I confessed to Kelly, after we'd left a nearly perfect colonial with a compromised foundation. "Perhaps I should adjust my expectations." Kelly, bless her, smiled reassuringly. "The right house is worth waiting for, Justine," she said. "Especially for someone who's been as patient and purposeful as you have." And then, property number 42. It changed everything. We were driving down a tree-lined street in the historic Oakwood district, and I spotted it before Kelly even slowed the car. A craftsman bungalow with a deep front porch, original woodwork, and that iconic red door. My heart literally raced as we parked. "This looks promising," Kelly said, noticing my wide-eyed expression. The interior, it somehow exceeded my wildest expectations. Original hardwood floors throughout, built-in bookshelves flanking a brick fireplace, a renovated kitchen that somehow respected the home's character while still being beautifully modern. Upstairs, 3 bedrooms with angular ceilings and dormer windows, perfect for guests, perfect for a home office. Standing in what would be my master bedroom, sunlight streaming through those mullioned windows onto wide plank floors, an unexpected wave of emotion just washed over me. "This is it," I whispered, running my hand along the century-old doorframe. "This feels like coming home to a place I've never been before." Kelly just nodded, understanding the immense weight of that moment. "The asking price is at the top of your range," she said softly, "but given the location and condition, it's fair. If you're serious, we should move quickly. Properties in this neighborhood typically receive multiple offers." That night, I barely slept. My mind raced, running numbers, visualizing my furniture in those sunlit rooms. By morning, my decision was concrete. We submitted an offer at asking price, along with a personal letter to the owners, explaining why their house would be the perfect first home for a first-generation homebuyer. Competition was fierce. 3 other offers came in, one even above asking price. The waiting period was agonizing, excruciating. I threw myself into work, trying desperately not to check my phone every 5 minutes for news from Kelly. 3 days later, it happened. My offer was accepted. The owners, an older couple downsizing to be closer to their grandchildren, had been genuinely touched by my letter. They chose my offer, despite the higher competing bid, because they wanted their beloved home to go to someone who would truly appreciate its character. I actually cried right there at my desk. But the loan process, of course, that brought its own set of unexpected complications. My self-employment income from the side business, while substantial, created all sorts of documentation challenges. The underwriter kept requesting more and more verification, pushing back the closing timeline by 2 agonizing weeks. "This is normal for self-employed borrowers," James reassured me. "Your finances are solid. It's just a matter of documenting everything properly." Those 2 weeks felt like an eternity. There was a competing buyer still hovering, ready to swoop in if my financing fell through. I submitted tax returns, profit and loss statements, every client contract, assembling this massive financial portrait to satisfy the underwriter. Finally, approval came through. Closing was scheduled for the following Tuesday. I signed countless documents, initialed dozens of pages, and then they handed me the keys. The moment felt absolutely surreal, the culmination of a journey that had started with those Sunday drives through neighborhoods exactly like this one. After the closing, I asked for some time alone in the empty house. I walked from room to room, letting the sheer significance of it all truly sink in. In the living room, I just sank to the floor and cried. Tears of accomplishment, of relief, of pure vindication. The daughter of renters, who couldn't even afford to leave a light on, now owned a piece of that American dream that had once seemed so utterly unattainable. Taking photos of each room, I did something I rarely did. I created a family group text. "Just closed on my first house." I wrote, beaming. "Can't wait for you all to visit and help christen it properly. Thinking of hosting a family dinner 2 weeks from Saturday once I'm settled. Save the date." The responses trickled in slowly. Mom sent congratulations. Natalie replied with a thumbs-up emoji. Adam, nothing. Crickets. Dad finally wrote, "Houses like that have high maintenance costs. Hope you budgeted for repairs." The tepid reaction stung. I won't lie, but it couldn't dim my immense accomplishment. Standing in what would become my bedroom, watching the sunset paint the walls amber, I made a silent promise to myself. This house would become a home, filled with warmth and welcome, regardless of my family's ability to fully share in my joy. Those 2 weeks between closing and my planned family gathering flew by in a blur of frantic activity. I quickly arranged to move my meager apartment furnishings, immediately realizing how inadequate they looked in the much larger space. The living room sofa that had dominated my apartment barely filled a corner of the new living room. My dining table for 2 looked completely lost in the proper dining room. One room at a time, I reminded myself, prioritizing the essentials. I found a second-hand dining table that could seat 8, perfect for the family dinner. A quick coat of paint and some budget-friendly chairs, and it looked fantastic. With basic furnishings in place, I poured my heart into preparing for my family's first visit. This wasn't just about showing off my new home. This was my chance to reconnect, to bridge that growing distance between us. Maybe, just maybe, seeing my success in person would help them understand my choices, my sacrifices. The guest room for my parents received special attention. I actually splurged on a new mattress and quality bedding, knowing Dad's back problems often made sleeping away from home difficult. The second bedroom was prepared for Natalie, her husband Troy, and an air mattress set up for the kids. The small third bedroom, eventually my home office, would accommodate Adam. Grocery shopping felt like a celebratory ritual. I filled my cart with everyone's favorites: Dad's pot roast, Mom's blueberry cobbler, Natalie's Caesar salad, Adam's buffalo chicken dip. The bill at checkout made me wince, but this celebration, I told myself, warranted the expense. Throughout the house, I added thoughtful, personal touches. A photo wall in the hallway displayed decades of family pictures: Mom and Dad on their wedding day, Natalie and Adam as toddlers splashing in a kiddie pool, all four of us on a rare beach vacation when I was 12. Recent photos were conspicuously absent, a reality I desperately hoped this visit might begin to change. Welcome baskets awaited each family member. For Mom, a gardening book and seed packets for the backyard plot we could plan together. For Dad, a custom keychain with the house address, symbolizing his welcome anytime. For Natalie's kids, age-appropriate books and coloring supplies. And for Adam, a gift card to a local brewery for a tour I thought we might take together. 1 week before the planned dinner, I sent formal invitations, complete with detailed directions, parking info, and a warm, heartfelt note expressing how truly meaningful their presence would be. Initial responses seemed positive. Mom called, asking what she could bring. "Just yourselves," I assured her. "Everything else is taken care of." Natalie texted that Troy had arranged time off work, and they were looking forward to seeing the new place. Adam even responded with a brief, "I'll be there," which, honestly, lifted my spirits more than I cared to admit. Dad remained silent, but Mom assured me they would drive together. Then, 3 days before the dinner, the shift began. Natalie called first. "Justine, I'm so sorry, but Emma has come down with an ear infection. The pediatrician says she shouldn't travel this weekend." My heart sank. Could Troy still come with Jack? I suggested, desperately trying to salvage part of the visit. Troy's mother was counting on us visiting her Sunday, so he needs to take Jack there while I stay with Emma, she explained, her excuse growing more and more convoluted. "We'll definitely come another weekend, once everyone's healthy." I accepted her explanation, but a heavy wave of disappointment settled in my stomach. That evening, Adam texted, "Boss just scheduled me for Saturday. Someone called out, and I need the hours. Sorry, sis." This felt less believable. Adam rarely picked up extra shifts. He constantly complained about his manager's last-minute scheduling. But challenging him would only create tension, so I responded with understanding and an offer to reschedule. Thursday brought Mom's call, the one I'd been dreading, the one that cemented the pattern. "Your father's back is acting up something terrible," she began, her voice thick with familiar notes of apology. "He can barely make it from the bedroom to the kitchen today. There's no way he could sit in the car for an hour each way. I could come pick you up," I offered, desperation edging into my voice. "Or just you could come, and we could FaceTime Dad during dinner." "You know he wouldn't want me traveling alone," she replied. "And he'd feel terrible being left out completely. Better to postpone until he's feeling stronger." By Friday afternoon, my family dinner for 6 had dwindled to a party of 1. I stood in my kitchen, surrounded by groceries for meals no one would eat, staring at the dining table set with new plates and carefully folded napkins. The house, which had felt so full of potential and promise, now echoed with a suffocating emptiness. I tried calling each family member, texting, offering alternative dates, different arrangements, anything to salvage the gathering. Voicemails and unanswered texts multiplied. Only Mom responded, reiterating Dad's health concerns and promising they'd visit soon. Saturday morning dawned bright and clear, the spring sunshine seeming to mock my solitude. The welcome baskets sat untouched on guest beds that would remain tragically unslept in. I moved mechanically through the day, putting away perishable groceries, covering prepared dishes with plastic wrap. By afternoon, I gave up the pretense of hosting and changed out of my carefully selected outfit, back into comfortable jeans and a t-shirt. I settled on the living room floor, surrounded by still unpacked boxes, and tried to focus on organizing books and kitchenware Anything to distract from the crushing emotional weight pressing against my chest. The house that was supposed to be filled with family laughter remained eerily quiet, save for the occasional ping of my phone. Work emails, social media notifications, but nothing, absolutely nothing from my family. The silence from them spoke volumes, especially from Dad, who hadn't directly acknowledged my invitation or even sent his regrets. As evening approached, I ordered a pizza. I just didn't have the heart to cook any of the special meals I'd planned. Sitting cross-legged on the floor among half-unpacked boxes, I scrolled through design websites on my tablet, forcing myself to focus on future plans rather than the present. Overwhelming disappointment. That's when Dad's text finally arrived. The notification made my heart leap with a momentary, foolish hope. "We need to talk about the house," was all it said. No congratulations. No apology for missing dinner. Just 7 words that somehow carried an incredibly ominous weight. My fingers hovered over the phone screen, the pizza forgotten beside me. Dad rarely texted. He usually preferred brief phone calls or had Mom relay messages. This direct communication suggested a significance I absolutely couldn't ignore. Despite the late hour, I called him immediately, my heart pounding. He answered on the second ring, his gruff hello completely devoid of warmth. "Dad, I got your text. Is everything okay?" I asked, trying to keep my tone neutral, despite the anxiety building in my chest. "Your mother's upset," he began, without any preamble. "Been crying on and off since you sent those house pictures." Confusion washed over me. "Crying? Why? Is she okay?" "No, Justine. She's not okay." His voice hardened, a dangerous edge creeping in. "None of us are okay with this show you're putting on." "Show?" I echoed, genuinely bewildered. "What are you talking about?" "This fancy house in that hoity-toity neighborhood. The dinner invitation, like you're some kind of hostess from those magazines your mother used to read." "It's not you, Justine. At least not the you we raised." The accusation landed like a physical blow. I sank back against an unopened box, struggling to process his words. "Dad, I've worked for this house for years. You know that. I saved every penny, worked multiple jobs. This isn't some show. It's the result of a decade of hard work." "Hard work?" He scoffed, a sneer audible in his voice. "Is that what you call it when you turn your back on your family? When you stop coming to Sunday dinners because you're too busy with your office job and side hustle? When you move to neighborhoods where your own father feels uncomfortable visiting?" Each question increased in volume until he was practically shouting. In the background, I could hear Mom's muffled voice, urging him to calm down. "I never turned my back on anyone," I protested, my own voice rising to match his intensity. "I invited everyone here this weekend. I prepared rooms for each of you. Cooked all your favorite foods. Nobody showed up because we don't belong in a house like that," he exploded. "Your mother took one look at those hardwood floors and fancy kitchen and knew she'd be afraid to touch anything. Adam said he felt sick seeing those pictures, knowing he'll never afford anything close to that on construction wages. Even Natalie felt it. Said you were showing off, making it clear how far you've moved beyond us." Tears sprang to my eyes, his words cutting deeper than he could possibly know. "That was never my intention, Dad. I wanted to share this with you, not make anyone feel bad." "Well, you failed," he stated flatly. "Your mother thinks you're embarrassed by where you came from, that you bought this house to escape your roots. To escape us." "That's not true," I whispered, though a sliver of doubt, a dark, insidious doubt, began creeping in. Had I unconsciously chosen a neighborhood so different from my childhood home as a form of rejection? "Isn't it?" Dad continued, relentless. "When was the last time you brought any of those work friends to meet us? When was the last time you talked about your family at that fancy office? Do your colleagues even know your father works construction and your mother cleans houses?" The question struck nerves I didn't even realize were exposed. I had compartmentalized my life, keeping my background separate from my professional world. Not from shame, I told myself, but from a desire to be judged on my own merits, not my origins. "I'm proud of where I came from," I insisted, my voice breaking. "Everything I've accomplished is because of what you and Mom taught me about work ethic and persistence." "Save it," Dad interrupted, cutting me off cold. "Actions speak louder than words, and your actions say you're building a life that doesn't include us." This house is just the final proof. Mom's voice grew louder in the background, and Dad must have partially covered the phone because their exchange became muffled. When he returned, his tone had shifted from anger to something far more resigned, more chilling. "Your mother wants me to tell you she loves you no matter what," he said, mechanically, like he was reading a script. "But I need to be straight with you, Justine. This changes things between us. You keep flaunting your success, making the rest of us feel small. There's going to be consequences for our relationship." "Consequences," I repeated, disbelief coloring my tone, my voice barely a tremor. "Are you actually threatening to cut me off because I bought a house? Because I succeeded?" "Call it what you want," he replied coldly. "Just know that choices have consequences. Always have." The call ended abruptly, leaving me in stunned, gut-punch silence. The pizza congealed in its box, completely forgotten. The emptiness of the house suddenly felt oppressive, not peaceful at all. Each room, a silent testament to what I had supposedly chosen over my family. I moved through the rooms in a daze, touching the walls, the door frames, the countertops that had brought me such joy just days earlier. Each beautiful feature now felt tainted, smeared by my father's bitter accusations. The guest rooms mocked me with their emptiness, the welcome baskets pathetic in their naive optimism. In the master bedroom, I caught my reflection in the mirror. Designer jeans and a casual top that cost more than my father likely spent on clothes in a year. When had that happened? When had I started spending $80 on shirts without blinking, me, who grew up watching my mother darn socks rather than replace them? Had success changed me in ways I hadn't even recognized? Had I, in my fierce determination to rise above financial struggle, inadvertently elevated myself away from the very people who had shaped me? These questions circled like vultures in my mind as I sank onto the edge of my bed. The night stretched endlessly before me, a dark canvas for painful, brutal self-examination. Sleep evaded me completely as I replayed years of interactions, searching for the exact moment when advancement became alienation in my family's eyes. By dawn, my eyes were swollen from tears, but my mind, strangely, had achieved a crystal-clear clarity that had been utterly missing before. The house wasn't the problem. My success wasn't the problem. The real issue ran much, much deeper, rooted in complex family dynamics and expectations that I had both fulfilled and, in their eyes, brazenly defied. Morning light filtered through the curtainless windows, casting long, stark shadows across my bedroom floor. My night of agonizing reflection had solidified something crucial. I couldn't control my family's reactions, but I could control my own response. This realization felt simultaneously liberating and terrifying. After a quick shower and a strong coffee, I sat at my new dining table, laptop open. The words didn't come easily, but they came, honestly. I drafted, deleted, and redrafted my response multiple times. This wasn't just a reply to Dad's accusations. This was a declaration of boundaries I should have established years ago. The final text was longer than I typically sent, but every single word felt utterly necessary. "Dad, Mom, Natalie, and Adam, I've spent the night thinking about our conversation and the feelings behind your absence yesterday. This is difficult to write, but I need you to hear me first. I love you all deeply. Nothing about my career path or this house purchase changes that. You are my roots, my foundation. The work ethic that built this life came directly from watching Dad work double shifts and Mom juggle multiple jobs. Every sacrifice you made for us kids taught me the value of persistence. But loving you doesn't mean I must diminish myself to make you comfortable. My success isn't a rejection of my upbringing. It's the fulfillment of the potential you nurtured. When I look at this house, I don't see an escape from my past. I see the physical manifestation of lessons you taught me. I won't apologize for working hard and achieving goals. I won't pretend I haven't earned this to soothe feelings of inadequacy I never created or intended. Most importantly, I won't sell this house or downplay my accomplishments to maintain relationships that should be strengthened, not threatened by my success. The door to this home will always be open to each of you whenever you're ready to walk through it without resentment or judgment. I've created spaces here specifically with you in mind. A guest room with the firm mattress Dad needs for his back, a backyard where Mom and I could garden together, room for Natalie's kids to play, Local breweries I thought Adam might enjoy exploring with me. I'm not choosing this house over family. I'm choosing to believe we can grow together rather than grow apart. I'm choosing to believe that love isn't diminished by square footage or mortgage payments. This door will always be open to you, but I won't close it on my dreams. I hope someday you'll understand that my success honors, rather than rejects, everything you've given me. Love always, Justine. My finger hovered over the send button for several minutes. This message would either begin to heal the rift, or it would deepen it irrevocably. There would be no middle ground. Finally, I pressed send, and then deliberately set my phone aside, turning my attention to unpacking books onto the built-in shelves. The responses came in stages, each revealing something profound about my relationships. Mom called first, her voice thick with tears. "I never meant to make you feel bad about your accomplishments," she began, her voice trembling. "I'm proud of you, Justine. Always have been. It's just hard watching you create a life so different from what I could provide." "You provided everything that matters, Mom," I replied gently. "Love, values, strength. The rest is just stuff." Our conversation lasted nearly an hour, the first truly honest exchange we'd had in years. She admitted feeling intimidated by my career and financial stability, confessing that my father's reaction stemmed partly from his own deep-seated sense of failure. "He wanted so much more for us than what he could achieve," she explained. "Seeing you accomplish what he couldn't, it's complicated for him." "I understand that," I acknowledged, "but I need him to see that my success is a success, too. Everything I am began with you both." We ended the call with tentative plans for her to visit alone the following weekend. "Just us girls," she suggested. "Your father needs more time." Natalie texted next, her message unexpectedly vulnerable. "I lied about Emma being sick," she confessed. "The truth is I was jealous and ashamed. Troy and I can barely afford our apartment rent, and seeing your beautiful house just made me feel like a failure. I'm sorry. Your message made me cry. Can we start over?" I called her immediately, and our conversation revealed years of competitive feelings I'd never recognized. As the older sister who seemingly did everything right, I had unwittingly represented a standard she felt she could never meet. My achievements had become a measuring stick against which she unfairly judged her own life choices. "I've never thought less of your choices," I assured her, my voice gentle. "You have beautiful children and a loving marriage. Those are successes that can't be measured in dollar signs or property deeds." We ended the call with plans for a proper visit the following month, once she'd worked through some of her complicated feelings. Adam maintained radio silence for 3 agonizing days before sending a terse text. "Need time to process. Not ready to talk yet." It was, surprisingly, the most honest communication we'd had in years, and I respected his boundary without pushing for more. Dad's response, though, that was the most painful. A week passed with no word. Then, a birthday card arrived in the mail, containing a gift card to a home improvement store. No note accompanied it, but the choice of gift, however small, acknowledged my new homeowner status. It was a tiny, almost imperceptible step toward acceptance. The weeks that followed brought a strange mix of sadness and liberation. I missed the easy family relationships I'd once taken for granted, the unspoken comforts. But there was also an enormous relief in no longer maintaining the exhausting fiction that everything was fine between us. The honest exchanges, however painful, felt like clearing stagnant air, like finally being able to breathe again. I threw myself into making the house truly mine. Walls were painted, furniture arranged and rearranged, window treatments installed. Each decision now reflected my taste and my needs, rather than endless considerations of what others might think. It was a freedom I hadn't previously allowed myself. When a colleague asked about my weekend plans, and I mentioned renovating the guest bathroom, she casually asked, "Will your family be visiting to see the improvements?" For the first time, I answered without evasion or sugarcoating. "We're working through some complicated feelings about my move," I said honestly. "Family dynamics are challenging sometimes, but we're figuring it out step by step." Her knowing nod and shared story of similar struggles with her own relatives made me realize how universal these experiences were. The pretense of perfect family harmony I'd maintained had only isolated me further. This revelation sparked another important decision. I joined a first-generation professionals networking group, connecting with others who were also navigating the complicated territory between their roots and their achievements. Their stories of similar family tensions helped me understand I wasn't alone in these struggles. 3 months after the failed family dinner, I hosted my first real gathering in the new house. Not for family, but for the friends and colleagues who had truly supported my journey. As glasses clinked and laughter filled rooms that had once echoed with emptiness, I felt the house transforming from a symbol of division into one of new beginnings. 6 months after moving in, my house finally, truly felt like home. The living room walls, once bare, now displayed a vibrant mix of local art and personal photographs. The kitchen had become my weekend sanctuary, a place where I experimented with recipes far more ambitious than anything I'd ever attempted in my apartment's tiny cooking space. The garden beds, dormant when I bought the property, now burst with fragrant herbs and colorful flowers, the result of weekend labor that left dirt under my fingernails and a deep sense of satisfaction in my heart. On a warm Saturday evening, my dining room hosted its first proper dinner party. 8 people gathered around the table that had sat so tragically empty that first weekend. Colleagues from work, neighbors from down the street, and friends from my first-generation professionals group. Wine flowed, conversation bounced between topics, and genuine laughter echoed through rooms that had once felt cavernous in their emptiness. "To Justine," toasted Diane from next door, raising her glass, who not only restored this beautiful old house, but filled it with warmth and welcome. Her words touched me deeply. This was exactly what I'd envisioned when I first walked through the property, not just owning walls and floors, but creating a space where connections flourished. The path with my family, though, remained far more complicated, marked by tentative steps forward and occasional frustrating retreats. Natalie had been the first to truly breach the divide, visiting initially without her husband and children, almost secretly, as if testing whether these new waters were safe. "This is really beautiful, Justine," she'd admitted, running her hand along the original woodwork. "I can see why you fell in love with it." That first visit led to others, eventually including Troy and the children. Watching her 5-year-old son, Jack, race through the backyard, building fairy houses beneath the oak tree, while her daughter Emma arranged pebbles along the garden path, it healed something in both of us. "They love coming here," Natalie confessed during her 3rd visit. "Jack asked yesterday if we could move to a house with pretty windows like Auntie Justine's." Mom had established a routine of visiting for coffee on Wednesday mornings, when Dad was at his weekly physical therapy appointment. These visits began awkwardly, with Mom perched on the edge of the sofa, as if afraid to fully occupy the space. Gradually, though, she relaxed, eventually helping me select curtains for the living room and suggesting placement for family photos. One Wednesday, she pulled a small box from her purse. "I brought something for you," she said softly. Inside lay Grandma's china teacup and saucer, a family heirloom I'd admired since childhood. "It belongs here now with you." The gesture acknowledged something profoundly important, that this house, despite its difference from our family's previous homes, was now part of our shared history. Adam maintained the most distance, responding sporadically to texts but consistently declining invitations to visit. Our relationship had always been the most tenuous, his resentment of my academic achievements dating back to high school. Still, small shifts emerged. When he needed help creating a resume for a job application, he actually called me, rather than asking Mom to relay the request, as he would have previously. "The place looks nice in the background," he commented during our video call, noticing the built-in bookshelves behind me. "You always did have an eye for that stuff." Coming from Adam, that qualified as effusive praise. Dad remained the final holdout. He had not stepped foot in my house, though Mom reported he'd ask questions about it after her visits. The birthday card with the home improvement store gift card had been followed by a Christmas card, signed with just his name, no message. These small acknowledgments offered a glimmer of hope, but no true resolution. Healing, I discovered, came from unexpected directions. I joined the neighborhood association and volunteered for the community garden project, planting roots of a different, but equally vital kind. These new connections provided invaluable perspective on my family situation, as neighbors shared similar stories of achievement, creating complicated ripples through family systems. My father didn't speak to me for 2 years after I got my doctorate, confided Maria, a professor who lived 3 doors down. He had an 8th grade education and felt my degree was somehow a criticism of him. It took time, but eventually he came around. Sometimes people just need space to adjust their vision of you. The most significant shift in my thinking, though, came through therapy, a step I took 4 months after the failed family gathering. Weekly sessions helped me untangle complex emotions around success, family loyalty, and identity. Your achievement doesn't diminish anyone else's worth, my therapist emphasized during a particularly difficult session. And their discomfort with your success isn't something you need to fix by becoming smaller. This perspective freed me from the crushing guilt that had shadowed my accomplishments. I started celebrating milestones openly, a major promotion at work, completing the front porch restoration, without immediately calculating how these successes might be perceived by my family. 9 months after moving in, an unexpected text arrived from Dad. Your mother says the gutters need cleaning before winter. Do you have someone handling that? The message contained no warmth, no personal connection, yet it represented something monumental. Concern for my home's maintenance, an acknowledgement of its importance, and perhaps an oblique offering of practical knowledge. I got quotes but haven't scheduled anyone yet, I replied carefully. Any recommendations? His response came surprisingly quickly. Those companies overcharge. I could take a look next weekend if you want. My hands trembled slightly as I typed my acceptance. When I called Mom to confirm, she admitted Dad had been contemplating this offer for weeks, working up the courage to extend this olive branch in the only way he knew how. The following Saturday brought the surreal sight of my father's truck in my driveway. He emerged, wearing work clothes, nodding curtly as if arriving for any ordinary job, rather than his very first visit to his daughter's home. Mom accompanied him, her nervous smile revealing the immense significance of this moment. Nice place, he offered gruffly, assessing the exterior with professional detachment. They don't build them like this anymore. Coming from Dad, this constituted high praise. I gave them the tour I'd planned 9 months earlier, watching Dad's eyes widen slightly at the craftsmanship of the original woodwork, and Mom's fingers trail across the kitchen countertops she'd only seen in photographs. In the backyard, Dad examined the gutters while I held the ladder. The familiar routine of working alongside him, passing tools and following directions, it bridged some of the distance between us. You did good, Justine, he said quietly as we packed up his tools. Not, I'm proud of you, or, I'm sorry, but an acknowledgement of my achievement that, for him, cost something profound to give. And I accepted it, for the monumental concession it represented. That evening, sitting on my porch swing, watching the sunset paint my garden in golden light, I reflected on the complex journey of the past year. The house that had initially seemed to fracture my family connections now offered a different kind of foundation. One where authentic relationships could potentially be rebuilt, brick by careful brick. I realized home wasn't just about the physical space or the financial achievement it represented. Home was creating a place where I could be my authentic self, while still keeping doors open to the people who shaped me. However complicated those relationships might be, the path forward wouldn't be simple or direct. Some wounds I knew would take years to fully heal, if they ever did. But sitting there, watching the shadows lengthen across my garden, I felt a deep, abiding peace. A peace that came with the knowledge that true success includes honoring your journey without ever apologizing for how far you've traveled. Honestly, this journey has been incredibly challenging. It made me question everything. Have you ever faced something like this, where your success created unexpected rifts with the people you love? What would you have done in my place? Tell me what you think in the comments below. I really want to know.